Hello and welcome to TAGtalk COVID-19 series. My name is Justine Liddelow and I'm the Commercial Director for TAG, your leading entertainment and event travel company. Throughout this series, I'll be talking to industry leaders from our preferred supplier partners about what effects the coronavirus is having on their business and day-to-day operations, what they're doing to combat these challenges, and some predictions of what the future will look like for our travellers when they consider travelling again. Today, I'm excited to welcome a special guest from Susterra, a very important sustainability partner. Please welcome James Dent, the founder of Susterra. A big welcome to you and thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Justine. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. James, sustainability is so important not only for the protection of the environment, but vital to our survival and well-being. Can you start by giving the audience a little bit of a background on your such meaningful company and an overview of the services that you provide?
Yes, hi. So I'd say that the company's been going for around 7 years. The main focus initially was kind of on sustainability with specifically trying to tackle the niche of business travel sustainability. So we kind of focus on some key areas of general reporting. So that's kind of looking at the carbon footprint associated with travel. So that's kind of air, rail, hotel, car hires, etc. And then as kind of time progressed, we kind of developed some of our technologies more into doing some sort of analysis to help companies with targets, with baselines, and working with them to and with the travel management companies such as yourself to develop travel policies to help reduce footprint, and then kind of a final wraparound service of things like offsetting, where you allow a company to kind of mitigate against the emissions associated with their travel.
Of course. So yes, I mean, speaking of that, so the carbon offsetting, I know it's been around for quite some time, but I still think many people truly don't understand how the carbon emissions are measured, calculated, and then analysed. So can you share how a company would go about accurately measuring their carbon footprint?
Yes, so it's a key. So the key thing is to kind of break it down into the components. So as I kind of alluded to before, generally with business travel, there are a few different components of the carbon footprint. So the main one is probably going to be flights. So kind of air, looking at things like rail, hotel stays. Lots of companies do lots of hotel stays, so that can kind of add up to a relatively significant amount of carbon footprint if the companies do a lot of hotel stays. And then other things such as kind of ferry, which is probably less, and let's say car hire. So in terms of the methodologies, we use kind of global standards or methodologies for those different components. So if we focus on something like air, we actually use something called TAGtalk methodology, which is the International Civil Aviation Organization. So that's the governing body globally of aviation. And they produce a methodology paper to describe and define how to calculate the carbon footprint of a flight. And our methodology is very robust. So it's actually airline and aircraft specific. So we know kind of what aircraft each airline uses for a specific route. And then TAGtalk publish fuel burn data for different types of aircraft. So from that we use their formula to derive a footprint output for per passenger per flight. And then the process is similar for rail, but we kind of look at, so in the UK with something like DEFRA, in Europe there's a European Environment Agency, in the US Amtrak publish again data sets which splits kind of electrified and non-electrified rail. And again we use their methodologies to identify and calculate what the footprint is per passenger rail journey. And then let's say for something like hotels, we use something called the International Tourism Partnership, which is a global body where lots of the major hoteliers are a part of, say the Hiltons, the Intercontinentals. And then they produce a methodology to describe how to calculate a footprint per region, and in terms of the star rating of the hotel. So we can calculate the carbon footprint of a 3-star hotel in Paris compared to a 5-star hotel in San Diego, for example. So that's air, rail, and hotel are the key focus points, and that's kind of the underlying methodologies to how the footprint itself is calculated in the first place.
Mm-hmm. So now that then I guess the clients can get an accurate measurement of their carbon footprint across the 3 channels, what comes next? What do they do once they've calculated all that? What is happening with that?
Well, so I think that then becomes kind of company dependent. So lots of companies incorporate that information into their annual reports. Lots of companies potentially have to report, depending if they're listed companies or if they're over a certain size. Other companies kind of want to report. Potentially, they might report to the Carbon Disclosure Project or, let's say, science-based targets. So they can use this data to kind of input into that scope 3, it's called the scope 3 carbon footprint of the business. They can also use this data to, as we mentioned before, kind of set targets, use it as baselines, kind of try to use the analysis to reduce their carbon footprint based on improving efficiencies of different routes, changing behaviors, changing habits, so on and so forth. And then the other options would be things such as carbon offsetting, if they wanted to kind of offset against the associated carbon footprint from the generated emissions of that travel, if you get me.
Perfect. And I think I know that Susterra has worked on some amazing offsetting projects around the globe. Are you able to share some of those environmental projects that you've worked on and how you came to, I guess, choosing those ones in particular?
Yeah, so I think so once a company, let's say they've decided they wanted to carbon offset, I think that the key things or the key suggestions that we would make would be kind of the project methodology and then the project region. So we kind of so our main focus is on reports and analysis, and we obviously do work in the carbon offsetting field, but we kind of defer to kind of large global organizations. So there are certain types of carbon offsetting projects that are backed, let's say, by the UNFCCC, so that's the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And there are certain projects that are associated with those kind of initiatives. So they are the projects that we kind of look at and go for, and then we would look at depending on which specific methodology. So that means if the company was interested in, let's say, a renewable energy project, let's say a wind farm or a hydro, or they're interested in a forestry project, or potentially they might be interested in a different region. So they might be interested in Asia or in Africa or South America. Potentially they had business interest in that region. And then we also look at what the socio-economic benefits are of those projects. So we would only select projects that are backed by the UNFCCC, and then have kind of, it's called verification validation, and then they're issued by two main kind of issuance bodies. One is called VCS and the other one's called Gold Standard. And then we would also look at what the kind of socioeconomic benefits are of those specific projects. So that means that what sort of outreach projects they are. Do they have, let's say, some sort of education program for women, or are they involved in some sort of AIDS awareness, or do they have some sort of outreach program where they're trying to employ local people, so on and so forth. So each of these projects will have kind of extra benefits on top of the environmental benefits of kind of reducing the footprint in the first place.
Fantastic. And I'm sure there's multiple projects around the globe that they can choose from, and you can guide them. But really, as you said, it's where they have an interest, or there's something that they really want to back and support. So that's great. Very important. So the coronavirus pandemic has certainly given the environment a well-needed break. But now with social distancing on some flights and aircraft flying half empty, some people choosing to fly private as an alternative. What advice can you give our audience about the importance of carbon setting, or what other things can they do to help the environment?
I think the first thing is kind of just being aware and educating yourself and oneself into kind of what the potential impacts are if we don't attempt to be more sustainable. I think one of the key things that the coronavirus pandemic has highlighted is potentially the fragile nature of the way of life that we currently have, and how quickly things can be really changed and go kind of head over heels. And I think for a long time, the scientific community has been making people aware of what the potential impact is going to be of global warming if we don't do something about it. So I think one of the key things at the minute is like a concept of stewardship. So kind of having a steward, being aware and then active kind of party to a concept of stewardship of the planet, whereby you're aware of what your impact is, and then you're trying to do something about that impact in a way of being as sustainable as possible. Obviously, we can't completely change our way of life. People are still going to travel, and it's important that kind of the way of life that we've built as humanity, as humans for a long time, all the technological advances we've made, it's important that we're able to reap those benefits, but whilst at the same time being aware of kind of what the potential impacts are if we choose not to be sustainable. And I think the key first step is something like reporting, and then being aware of what the footprint is. And then if you also want to be involved in, let's say, carbon offsetting projects, which are actually kind of helping to finance sustainability projects globally, then that's obviously a great thing to be involved in as well. And you're playing your part in kind of an extra bit of stewardship of the planet moving forward, I think.
Yeah, which I think, you know, it needs to be, it's a group effort. We're all in this together for the future of the planet. So I think what you're doing is very admirable. But that's all we have time for today, James. Thank you again for joining us and sharing such valuable insight and extremely, you know, around sustainability. And for those listening, if you would like any further information or are interested in learning more about carbon offsetting and sustainability efforts, please don't hesitate to contact your local TAG office or visit www.tag-group.com. Until next time, stay safe. James, thank you once again.
Thank you. Bye.